Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get pre-orders of all the upcoming Force of Will sets, as well as releases of previous sets after they come out. CCGprime.com, with over 100,000 Force of Will singles, as well as out-of-print boxes from the past, and TCG accessories, as well as FoulLibrary.com, a wonderful resource for deck lists, article discussions, and more. Check them out at FoulLibrary.com, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer patrons Shukong Fu, Vite Ramen, and Maxime Van He. Thank you for your support. Class is in session. Hey there, rulers, DMO73 here, bringing you the feature match for the week. Today we have Robert Strong playing his Faria Heroes, updated with some of the cards from the 7th and beyond, and I am playing Dante Discard. It is a more I want to say aggressive, but more like hand disruption focused version of Dante, designed to kind of be more the aggressor and just limit your opponent's play lines through all the different ways that we can make things happen with discard, as well as the fact that we have a lot of multiple discard outlets, like discarding multiple things at a time or selection of multiple things at a time. And even starting from turn 1, you know, if we hit 6 stage stone in front of the coin, we can get discarding right away. So we're jumping here, just hit the magic stone of the demonic world, so no play here from us on turn 1, at least for right now. Lucifer is always an option. Robert hitting that extra will on turn 1 thanks to Faria getting a guidance counter. Does use he starts to use the 1 will here, but we catch it and say, like, or he starts to use his stone here, but we're like, no, you should have just used the 1 will from your that you produced for the turn to play a Schrodinger white cat. Pretty strong opener here, just to be able to start setting up guidance counter triggers, as well as being able to tap my stuff down to keep his aggression up if needed. It's certainly a card that you would normally see potentially played more at quick cast speed, because of the fact that it can put a counter on something and then immediately tap something down without being at risk itself. But you know, we have the extra will, maybe don't have anything else to play with it this turn, might as well, don't want to waste it, especially since we still have coin. Going from there, we pass. Do want to give a huge thanks to Converging Wills for this gorgeous new Atomic Bahamut playmat we're using over here. We get to order a Dark Charlotte, who has the enter effect to go get us a Dark Sphere from the sideboard. We are going to get Dark Sphere of Carlina. We do hit the 6 stage stone, which is a little unfortunate, because we're going to want to swing in here with Dark Charlotte to get the most value off of it. But it is what it is. There's not really much we can do there. We are going to try to move into combat here, and the way Dark Charlotte works is when she's ordered, she has enough keywords to be able to go grab that go grab Excalibur Fallen to immediately cast it. So we're going to float some will before she swings, swing in with Dark Charlotte, go to trigger to be able to go get Excalibur Fallen. And the best thing about this, and the reason why I like Excalibur Fallen so much, is because it doesn't have to name something that's on the field. You just name a Resonator card. So it can also just rip your opponent's hands to shreds, potentially stealing multiple cards at once, because of the ability of the Force Resonance Satan. So we can grab whatever cards we want, and we're going to grab the main linchpin to try to prevent ourselves from getting blown out next turn, which is the red-white Lenneth. He did have one in hand, so we were safe to be able to steal that. Thankfully, no Call of the Hero to be able to just go grab another one, so we're pretty safe. And then we get to potentially swing in for 6, see if he's going to block it. Throw his Schrodinger under the bus. Doesn't really make too much sense for him to do so. It's just a matter of if he wants to go down to 34, because I didn't see any removal in there. Oh, does choose to use the coin to go ahead and flash in a Charlotte Inheritor. So Charlotte showdown here. Doesn't have any light will to be able to make off of her ability, but it is just going to be a nice little 6/7 flyer, which is bigger than my 6/6 Dark Charlotte, and then he can block. So she will get killed. I'll still get to gain 6 to go up to 46, which is pretty good. And then we're back to being able to just go ahead and cast World of Amadeus for free because the J ruler I control was killed. And then we can use that last floating black to cast Lucifer, defeated One Wing. So this is also another discard outlet if he tries to kill it or swing, which doesn't help us too much because he's got that Schrodinger, so it'll just get tapped down. But it is more life gain, which is a big portion here. Against the Faria deck, it's very easy for that deck to pump out a lot of damage very quickly, and so having that early life gain is important. Going into the main phase, trying to choose where he wants to put that guidance counter. Is going to put it on itself, which will then trigger Schrodinger and can tap down my Lucifer. So I am pretty vulnerable for the turn, completely tapped out at this point. If for some reason the Lucifer dies, though, he is going to have to discard a card, which makes something like Shining Heart feel not nearly as good. Because, you know, it'll just steal value off of it. Not necessarily the end of the world if he can try to kill me, but again, having that 5100 life total does make that a little unfortunate. So cheating in the Shining Heart here does call stone. It's a white stone. Shining Heart does, if it can get some guidance counters on it, can start pumping the board and burning stuff, and we do see a Hero of the Sacred Spirit. Puts 2 counters on the Shining Heart, which will then burn my board for 800 damage, and give everything on his side of the field plus 200 attack and swiftness. It doesn't get to double because it only has 2. If it had 3, then this would be lethal, but just with the 2 of them, because I have that life gain, it's pretty nice to be able to stay safe for now. But everyone's got a plus 200 buff coming in. Charlotte herself gets to swing in for quite a bit here because she has +1/+1 for each guidance counter on entities she controls. So she's already swinging for 10. So this takes me down to 41. And then Schrodinger gets to swing in for 5. Takes me down to 36. Then another 9 from him to take me down to 27. And then lastly, another 9 from the hero to take me down to 18. So even with the life gain, without the life gain, I would have been fine. But it certainly does make things more... The buffer is nice because it makes it so that if I can clear the board off suddenly and gain some life back, especially since I have that Dark Charlotte back in my hand, I can kind of keep going from there. Using the 6 Sage Stone to go ahead and order the Charlotte, the Dark Charlotte we brought back, we'll get another Sphere. Now, normally in this deck, we actually grab a Sphere of Asmodeus last because we want to be able to have Dark Alice have the option to be able to destroy herself with her Regalia. But because I need the life gain here, we're going to go ahead and get Amadeus here. This will bring me up to being a 10/10 for Dark Charlotte. You can go ahead and use Crawler Through the Cracks of Time here as a follow-up because I have those 2 Dark Spheres, and then also just cast a Dark Charlotte. So while Dark Charlotte doesn't get her order resonance effects or revolution effects, it does still let me potentially peek at his hand and steal a Resonator. All he has there is a 1st boon and a 3rd boon, I believe, or 7th boon, which is pretty good. So we're going to use Dark Charlotte here to swing at Schrodinger. We don't want to be tapped down anymore. We definitely have enough to do Excalibur Fallen, and this will let us kill, I believe we do Shining Heart here, call Shining Heart so that he doesn't have a way to double the damage from all his guys. So then Dark Charlotte will get to connect, we'll gain 10, go back at the 28, get the Schrodinger off the board, and then we've got a nice blocker. Follow Through the Cracks of Time does currently have plus 200 attack and drain because of his ability related to Dark Spheres, and then Dark Alice is just a 6/6 body. Does put a counter on the Faria, so he can Judgment now if he wants. I'm keeping in mind that Faria, when Judgment's hit, will have Imperishable, but also will have the ability to get a stone into play tapped, so he doesn't technically miss Stone Call for turn, which is pretty nice. Does choose to just call Stone, though. Doesn't necessarily... It's not a bad play by any means, especially since he can just Judgment whenever he wants at this point. Does have the Hero's Call, knowing that I'm going to be able to cast another Excalibur Fallen next turn off of another Faria swing. I think saving the Hero's Call might be a good option. Having no Resonators in his hand means he's at a position where he could let me try to rip his hand apart, see that there's no Resonators, then do the search, grab a Shining Hero next turn, or a Lenneth next turn, and be able to really kind of go in from that perspective. Like Lenneth into a Judgment, which would be really good. So let's see what he does here. Charlotte's currently a 6/7 with flying, so he's just choosing to pass the turn there at that point. Move to recovery. Hitting a Ragnarok Stone off the call. Dark Spheres are recovered at this point. Have a second Crawler through the cracks of time. Floating some will off of the 6-8 stone before we attack in. This will trigger Dark Charlotte again, trying to go in for another 10. Casting Excalibur Fallen. Which I believe we're going to use to call the Charlotte. So Charlotte's killing Charlottes, both dark and light. See that Heroes call there. Makes me real sad because I know that, you know, there's no discard I have that can disrupt that. So that means that next turn I'm probably going to deal with some kind of pressure. Ironically enough, so I get the 3,800, you know, get the 1,000 life points, which is nice. Gets that off the board. Ironically enough, because that's Ragstone, and not an extra darkness stone, I have to kind of just hope to get a bunch of life here. Go up to 47. And then I need to use the Excalibur Fallen now just to get the other body off the board, just to make it so that if he does grab something like a Lenneth, so there's two interesting points here. If he grabs Lenneth, then he has to cast Lenneth, then do Judgment, which means that the burn from Shining Heart doesn't kill anything. I mean, it kills the Dark Alice, but that's it, which leaves me a blocker, which is pretty huge. And then he would get to double damage and get swiftness, but it wouldn't do anything beyond that. And I'd probably still survive. The other weird thing is if he grabs Shining Heart, he could play it and then Judgment and then absolutely wipe everything off both sides of the board. And then it would still be lethal, weirdly enough. Because it'd be 34 plus another 18. So the question is, does Robert see that line? If I have a Lucifer in hand, then that, you know, then I'm safe from that. It'd be 34 plus 18, 32. It'd be still exactly lethal. He does grab the Lenneth. So weirdly enough, grabbing the Lenneth here, I think in my head, because I didn't swing with the other crawler, if the misplay on my end is because I didn't swing with the second crawler, which I couldn't because it just came in this turn, I'm actually, if he had grabbed Shining Heart, I lose this match, because you could play Shining Heart, then Judgment, put all your counters on Shining Heart, burn the board for 16, gets everybody off, and then both of them have enough attack to do lethal. But instead, we're going for the Lenneth route. And the irony here is by going for the Lenneth route, which gets him a Shining Heart, puts more bodies on board, sure, but because the double damage won't be in effect for when he does the 800 damage to the board, it only kills my Dark Alice, and then I still have a blocker. So I can chump one of the blocks, or I can chump block the Faria, you know, as it were, with the crawler, gain life, and prevent the 4,000, you know, the 3,400 damage from it, at which point I get to survive. So, and then I can crack back for the lethal. So very interesting, you know, just kind of thinking about that. You wouldn't normally think, oh, I should grab just one body as opposed to the body that gets me another one. But the fact that Faria gets to put all those guidance counters on something at once is kind of the big powerhouse of this comeback mechanic, this comeback swing that could have happened. So we see the Shining Heart, gets a stone into play tapped, which we'll grab here in a second. Burns the board for 8, which just hits my Faria, or my Dark Atlas, because the other two are currently 9/9, staying to the Dark Sphere. Now everyone's going to be doubled. Swinging in for 19 damage here, or 18 damage here. Because it has +2 attack and swiftness. Take that, go down to 29. Has a nice little indestructible controller here because, you know, Lenneth has her own guidance counters on her, and so does Shining Heart. So even if I was to block, you know, only one side would die. The problem is anything he tries to attack into here, has Drain. That's the biggest issue that he's got to deal with right now. So it actually kind of makes more sense potentially for him to not swing and to leave a couple of blockers up. Especially since none of my stuff has flying. Ultimately does choose to throw the Lenneth into the Dark Charlotte, which I think was an interesting decision. And then at that point, I believe is going to commit to leaving the Faria up. Asks how many cards in hand. I just have one, which if you were paying attention earlier is a single copy of Virgil. All 4 of my Dark Fallen Excaliburs have been cast. Does choose to swing in and tap out. So I get to block with the Crawler. At that point in time, the Virgil in hand is lethal. And I do have the will to be able to just cast it. I could even order it if I so chose, but that would be foolish. Thankfully, I do get to call another stone thanks to Ragnarok Stone. I'm looking at different options, thinking about what white might have for one will that could potentially punish me here. Or for 0 will, trying to think of what might possibly be castable for 0 will that I don't, you know, follow up with. Swinging in for that 9, we took down to 7, so we need to find 7 damage from somewhere. Trying to think of the safest ways to try to land that damage. Going ahead and casting World of Amadeus, which can bring us back Dark Charlotte. We can use the 2 Dark Spheres to play another Crawler. That's a big play here as well, just to put another body on board if we need it. And I think the plan is let's try to go as far as possible before having to do that. Just to see what we end up needing to be able to use. Going ahead and using these Villain Stone to order Dark Charlotte. Getting another ability here. We are finally going to go ahead and grab the Flying. So now Dark Charlotte is swinging for 12, which is still more than enough. Floating a black off of the 6 Sage Stone. Moving in to try to recover it, or try to swing, see if he has any kind of response. We don't think there is one at 0 will. Ultimately, Chuz, nope, I don't have it, so we move on to game 2. Did have the Virgil, just in case there was some kind of lethal, or some kind of removal spell that I wasn't remembering for a Dark Charlotte alternative. Going into game 2 here. So in that first game, Excalibur Falling really proven its worth just because of the fact that it gets to rip cards out of hands too. So even if there's something on field to kill, it's still a free discard spell that gets you a lot of hand knowledge, which is great. Magic Soda Villains coming down here on turn 1, so we're certainly not doing an order. But the beauty is this deck still likes Lucifer, which is an ordered card, or which is a villain card. Callstone, we got that floating white here. Uses the floating white to cast, I believe, a Schrodinger. Yep, Schrodinger coming down here again. Gets to draw a card off of the Faria. Seeing if there's any other actions that are going to be taken here. Susie does have, looks like, a Lenneth and a Flameheart again. End of the turn, we get to flash in that Lucifer, defeated one wing, so a nice little life point swing right there at the beginning, and then get to move into our turn. So Lucifer, to me, is kind of the only card that justifies villain decks playing a 1-of Villain Stone, because like we're not doing anything. If it's not a 6-stage stone, we can't order that turn anyway, and is a good quick cast 1-drop villain, and it does set us up for being able to do plays later, at least while we don't have dual stones. As soon as we get dual stones back or shifting into Wanderer, I think you don't care, you can shift away from it, but for right now in New Frontiers, I think that villain decks playing Lucifer can justify playing the 1-of Villain Stone. Dark Charlotte swinging in here. Now we could say, Excalibur Fallen, we could say Schrodinger, see if we could hit the one on field. Maybe there's one in hand. Ultimately, though, it's better for us because he's going to get to go to more counters next turn. It is better for us to just go ahead and call Lenneth. So we're completely ignoring what he's got on the field and ripping that Lenneth out of the hand, because that, no matter how many copies he had, that's a good play for us to rip, because it makes his cheat in a free hero next turn significantly less good. It just doesn't provide nearly as much value, which is what we want. Gets to cheat in a hero here off of the Faria before he calls Stone. See if he cheats in that Shining Heart, which would still be a good play right now, I think. Just to get it ready, it just sets him up for, if I have another Dark Charlotte, does that get ripped out of his, off the field too, and it doesn't get to provide nearly as much value. You're going to cheat it a Light Charlotte Inheritor, and he does have one white if he wants to be able to cast a spell off of it. So let's see if he chooses to use one of those one drops in his sideboard. Doesn't look like there's much in his choices that would be good for right now. But we'll see if he decides to save that will for something else, or burn it now for some effect. Keep the Faith on the Schrodinger wouldn't be terrible. You could keep the Faith, give it +4/+4, swing and kill the Lucifer, get that off the board. Wouldn't cost you a card from hand though, so is that really what you want to do? Ultimately though, just chooses to call Stone and let the effect go by. Paying one here in the main, thinking about using coin and one in the main phase. Does see he is that second Schrodinger here. Second Schrodinger is particularly effective, helpful here, because he could do it after, you know, in response to me going to combat, to flash it in, to then tap down the Charlotte so I don't get a free Excalibur Fallen, because she only triggers when she attacks. So if you stop her from being able to attack, then, you know, that's some free value there. Before recovery, though, we're going to go ahead and say, nah, Fallen Angel of Black Tears, get rid of the Schrodinger that's on field, draw a card, get myself a little bit more safety. Call Stone, hit a Magic Stone of the 6 Sage, which we're going to have to float some will with before recovery. We do know that we're going to trade into the Dark Charlotte, but we're not trying to, or the Light Charlotte, but we're not trying to rip the Charlotte out of his hand just yet. We do see that going into combat, because go ahead and make the Schrodinger play to tap down the Dark Charlotte, which is smart. Keeps his hand safe, at least for now. Trying to decide what will I'm going to float in response from that 6 Sage Stone to try to make some value out of it this turn. Do have a crawler, an underground crawler, so I think part of it is, oh, do I, you know, use blue and pitch it? Do have a regular Excalibur Fallen in my hand, which I could use, so I'd have to float double black, which would leave me with just the Villain Stone, which doesn't feel necessarily terrible, but it does mean I can rip. With the previous hand knowledge, ripping out Shining Heart from his hand would feel really good, because I knew that if he had top decked a Lenneth, you know, because he flashed in the Charlotte, I would have known if he top decked a Lenneth, so there's probably no Lenneth in hand, which means, or a call, you know, or a searcher for a Lenneth in hand, which means that it would have been better. It's better to just get rid of the Shining Heart and not have to deal with it at all. Take away that board wipe and pressure that he potentially offers. Floating black, choosing to let the Charlotte get tapped down at that point. Casting Excalibur Fallen. Trying to rip Shining Hero, Flameheart, to get that out of the board. Leaving him with just 2 third boons and a first boon. First boon's uncastable right now, and I don't have any tokens, and I'm not using any God's Arts. So leaving him with essentially a dead hand. And a board that doesn't pose much threat to me, considering how much life I'm gaining here. I go to start to cast a 1-drop, and then I go, wait a minute, it's not a villain. That doesn't work. And so I'll pick it back up. So I just have to leave the 1 stone open and pass turn. I'm not even going to swing with the Lucifer here. It doesn't bear much point, especially since, you know, if he does find a way to, you know, try to send his Dark Charlotte into my Charlotte, I can block it with Lucifer and make it feel awkward. That also doesn't really make a ton of sense here, because he can just tap it down. But there wouldn't have been much point in swinging, because if I had swung, then he would have just blocked with the regular Charlotte. And I already know his hand's pretty dead, so stealing a card out of a dead hand, you know, a hand that I already know is dead, isn't necessarily as good as leaving the discard that comes from Lucifer till later, till maybe he gets a better hand. So you do see a Charlotte, third Charlotte to hit the field, Charlotte, Future of the Sacred Spirit. So we got Charlotte the Future, Charlotte the Inheritor, and then Dark Charlotte, all on the field at the same time. It's a party of Charlottes. It's the Spider-Man meme, everybody pointing at themselves. And then we're going to see a Judgment. So this is pretty good here, because he can put 3 counters straight from Faria onto Charlotte. Gets him the Threadstone off the top there, which is nice for next turn. For that first boon. So he's going to get to draw 2 cards and produce an extra white will here. So he can kind of follow up this turn pretty well. I think there is a world where I might have preferred to use the white stone versus the hero stone to play the Charlotte, just because now these 2 cards that we're drawing are limited in what they could potentially do when compared with, you know, when paired with the white will from Charlotte. If we'd used the white stone and we had drawn into a fire Shining Hero, then we could have at least played him or tried to play, you know, we are going to use the white for an Able, interestingly enough. Didn't realize that was in the deck. So a nice little Able, top 2 of the Light Palace, to be able to have Eternal. Does send his Charlotte into my Dark Charlotte, which then gets to drain me here. So it has sitting on a pretty wide board. No real, unfortunately, protection. The regular Charlotte has barrier because she has 3 counters, and she is +10/+10. So that's also a big piece here. But at this point in time, I know what the whole hand is. Well, I know all but 1 card in hand, so I'm not super worried about what's coming my way. So we swing in with Lucifer first, get that 400 damage. Another Dark Charlotte gets to come in here. Same as last time, we're going to go ahead and grab the Asmodeus Sphere, which is not what we're normally grabbing, to give +2/+2. So she's at 10. We are currently bigger. So his Charlotte right now is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's an 11, 12. We can use the 2 spheres to play Crawler. We are going to, before we move into combat, go ahead and play a Dark Mage of Ma'at to try to kill the Schrodinger, which will rip one of the +1/+1 counters out of here. This is one of the reasons why, again, we're, you know, if you hit a 6 Sage Stone on one, or if you're on the coin, the Dante deck who wants to be killing itself and flipping a bunch, which is not what we're doing this match. The Dark Mage of Ma'at is a really good way to just turn one, rip quite a few cards, and then immediately reset your Dante, which is really, really nice. Because you can just target herself because she doesn't get a buff if you're not grabbing the +2/+2 sphere. And so then you can make them discard 2 cards if they didn't play a 1-drop. We're going to swing our Dark Charlotte into the regular Charlotte. We are going to attempt to cast the Dark Charlotte alternative and then see if he has a response. If he does, then, you know, if he does in such a way that it would impact our ability to kill the Charlotte, we'll just use the Dark Charlotte to then kill the Charlotte. But he doesn't, so we can actually call the 1-drop Charlotte, get that off the board, make his Dark Charlotte much smaller, and then he blocks with the Able, but we still get to gain 10. So this, all in all, for us, great. Puts us a much bigger life total. We get a better peek of that hand. We're sitting on some more will. Hit that Ragstone again, so we're sitting on 1 black stone, but at least it's 1 actual black stone as opposed to 1 villain stone. Do have the ability to cast that first boon now, which is pretty nice. Again, those 2 7th boons aren't going to do much in this particular matchup, especially since the only God's Art we have is unchaseable, so canceling a God Art's not going to do too much. Leaving the hero stone open this time, which is the better use of his stones to play that first boon. We're going to get to draw 3 cards, technically, and remove them from the game. Seeing another Shining Hero, a Charlotte, and a Guidance. The Guidance is a pretty strong hit here because of its ability to add more +1/+1 counters, or give a pump, add more limit Guidance counters, and give Eternal for the turn. This is pretty big. Problem is we have a couple of chump blockers, and a lot of our chump blockers have drain, which is not great. And at this point in time, his Charlotte is not bigger than my Dark Charlotte, so he can't comfortably swing into that. If he wanted to kill it, he'd have to swing in with the Faria, who's on the ground. Dark Mage of Ma'at can just throw herself under the bus at that point, block that. If he swings with the Charlotte, you know, the Dark Charlotte's just bigger. If he swings with the Able, we can block it with Crawler, who is bigger than Able, so neither will die, and I'll gain 9. So he's at a point right now where he can't quite control the board through combat, which is a little unfortunate because that is kind of the inherent strength of Faria, is by using combat tricks to keep the board clear, whether it be the board wipe damage or, you know, tapping something down and then attacking and that kind of thing. So we're just going to use Faria to call stone. Hits us another hero stone. Does still have coin, so has 3 will available here, so we could feasibly play. There is a play here where we cast Shining Heart, and then immediately use the coin on Guidance to be able to burn the board 8. That gets rid of Faria, or that gets rid of Lucifer and the 4/4, and leaves Dark Charlotte and the Crawler. And then Faria can kill the Dark Charlotte, or even the Able can crash into Dark Charlotte and kill her without being worried about trading, which is a pretty good clear there, an option for sure. It does leave him pretty tapped out, so if I do have follow-up or if he can't clear the board, the Crawler is the big problem for that line there. Because, you know, the Crawler can block Able, and sure, it'll be a trade, but I'll gain, and then you have to throw Faria under the bus, who then trades with Dark Charlotte, and that feels bad. And then you're left with just Shining Hero untapped, or as your only blocker, when you're staring at a pretty low life total, and you've given me a bunch of life in the process. So ultimately does choose to just pass the turn there, and puts an extra guidance counter on Faria, and then we go into my turn. I believe at this point in time I do have an Amadeus in hand, so I'm trying to see if there's a way that I can get my own Dark Charlotte killed. We're going to start with the Lucifer swing, see what happens. Takes it, goes down to 17. Swing for another 4. So you're like, you're going to commit to a block there. Nope, going to take it, goes down to 13. Could trade with the Able, but then he knows that, you know, then the 9's coming through pretty safely. So it does go down to 13 there. From there, we move into combat. Gonna swing in at the Dark Faria, or at the Faria with the Dark Charlotte, knowing that this is gonna be a kill on my end. She's gonna get killed. She doesn't have Bane. I don't have the Amadeus or the Astema orb. I'm mainly just looking to try to resolve this trigger here and seeing if I could bait some stuff out of his side of the things. So I cast this, and then we have a little bit Excalibur Fallen. And then we have a little bit of a conversation about exactly how Excalibur Fallen works. So the way Excalibur Fallen is, at resolution, I will name a card. And so when I'm naming a card, you no longer have a chance to respond. So I put the spell on the chase, and then I say, do you want to do anything before I name a card? Because once I've named a card, this is resolving. And so we had to kind of have to talk through that a little bit to see if he wants to have some kind of response or anything. And that's why this card is kind of really, really good, is because, so he has a thing on field that I really want to kill, the Charlotte. That's the kind of biggest threat to my Dark Charlotte right now. I don't really want it on the field, but if I cast, he has that guidance, which can give it Eternal. So casting Excalibur Fallen, if he does use guidance on it to protect it, I can just change what card I named and shift it to being disrupting the cards in his hand, which feels really good. The flexibility of Excalibur Fallen and being able to control your opponent's play lines is very solid for Dante. Does use the guidance here. Her manifestation of the Sacred Spirit gives her a guidance counter plus 400 plus 400 and Eternal. Then I can call something different. I will call, I believe, Lenneth. Doesn't have any in hand. That's fine. And then we say, okay, well, now do you want to go to blocks? He says, yes, I do want to go to blocks. Great. I'll get to gain some more life. I'll gain 10 more. The Faria doesn't die because it's got the +4, which is great. And the Eternal kicks me up to 77. I do have another Dark Charlotte here, which I could use, but ultimately I want to try to rip his hand apart. So we're going to do pay 5 and order a Amadeus. So this gets... it's 5 because I can use 2 Dark Spheres, so 3 and 2. I get another Dark Sphere here. We're going to go ahead and grab the Sphere of Belial, so now she has flying. She's a 3,000, 3,000 on enter, forces into discard 2 cards. Go to swing in for 9. He goes to block. We'll respond with the God Art of Asmodeus, or Amadeus, which will then remove all resonators he controls from the game, even if they have Eternal. That doesn't help him at all, and it can't be chased. He goes to try to cast the 7th boon, and I'm like, you cannot chase this ability. So you cannot respond to the God Artifact. This is going to resolve. So those will both get removed from the game. He can't cast any more 2-drop Charlottes or Abels. And then because, he had declared a blocker, my 9's going to go through, take him down to 4, leaving him with, I believe, just 1 card left in hand. Yeah, I believe just 1 card, the 7th boon. And then just to kind of put more bodies on board and insult to injury, I'm going to play Dark Mage of Ma'at to kill my own Lucifer and force him to discard that last card, literally leaving him with a Faria and 0 cards in hand, and an Amadeus, who has flying and is 30-30, 32-32 with drain. Any damage that I would take, she would take instead, and she's significantly bigger than Faria, and he only has 1 card. This feels like a pretty solid finishing lockout here. Sorry, he does have 1 more first boon left, or 7th boon left, and then a water hero, which doesn't do anything here. Even shining, there's nothing between his 4 cards. So he's got 7th boon, flame hero, Charlotte, and water hero. None of those, none ways to be able to generate a guidance counter during the main phase. It would only be during the end phase, and at that point in time, he doesn't have anything on field. Any combination of those that gets him to a way to answer a flying Amadeus, except for a Schrodinger. A Schrodinger would do it, but he'd have to get the Charlotte to then use the guidance counter to I think she only draws you cards on 2 guidance counters, so he has no way to draw any additional cards at this point with what's in his hand. So he's locked out, and at that point in time, that is going to be the game. So Robert's going to think through a few things, but ultimately Amadeus is going to swing through, limiting the options from his hand through the constant ripping that we've done throughout the game will get us there, and that will be the match. So, yep, Robert shows the hand, says we concede because he can't deal with Amadeus, and that will be the game. Thank you guys so much for watching. The Dante discard deck list will be up later this week, and until next time, this is DMO73 saying, class dismissed.